Welcome to the third episode of PC Flips, and in this one I built a super budget PC for under $250, and not only is this a capable 1080p gaming PC, but it also looks half decent as well. However, this wasn't a very smooth building process at all, as not only did I run into some compatibility issues, but I also had to do some troubleshooting after building the computer to actually be able to get it to work, and also going slightly insane. Dude, I've been troubleshooting this for the past half hour, and I'm about to lose my goddamn mind. So this video is a great example of why you should properly test the hardware that you buy secondhand, but also that you should check to make sure that it's all compatible. So the origins of this build are based around this CPU, motherboard, and RAM combo that I got locally. I got this combo for $65, which features a Core i7-3820 CPU, an ASRock X79 motherboard, and 4 gigs of OCZ Gold RAM. And it even still has the plastic peel on it. Now when I bought this for $65, I originally thought it was a pretty good deal. However, I've been seeing a lot of X79 or X99 Xeon AliExpress bundles going for about 50 to 60 bucks. They come with a much faster CPU, a quote-unquote new motherboard, and usually 8 or 16 gigs of RAM. And that honestly might have been a better choice, especially considering all the troubleshooting I had to do with it. And the only real advantage of this bundle over the AliExpress one is that this is a much nicer motherboard and it has some extra features. For the RAM, I took out the very cool OCZ Gold kit and put in a few random 4GB DDR3 sticks that totaled to 16 gigs. This isn't ideal, but they all run at the same speed and they also seem to be pretty stable. Plus we get that nice quad channel support. So for the cooler, I originally wanted to use this Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo that I got bundled in for free a long time ago because it only has mounting hardware for one type of socket. And I thought that socket was OGA 2011. However, when I went to try and install the standoffs for the cooler, it just wouldn't go in at all. And I tried for a solid 20 minutes trying to get it to work, and the standoffs were just not going to screw in at all. So since I needed a different cooler and could not wait a week for a cheap one to arrive, I went on Amazon and selected the cheapest tower cooler that had support for LGA 2011 and with Prime shipping. I ended up with this Thermalright AK90 CPU cooler. I really didn't look into this cooler much other than the socket compatibility, and I was unaware of how small this tower cooler was. I honestly thought it was a 120mm tower cooler from the pictures, but it's actually a 92mm tower cooler. This is still perfectly adequate for the CPU at stock speeds, as you'll see in the benchmarks later, but I have a feeling if we had something like a 3930K in this board, and I tried to overclock it, the cooler would not be able to handle it very well. This wouldn't be the last of the minor problems I had with this build, but for storage I went with a simple Laxar 480GB SATA SSD, which was just $18 on Amazon. Just need something cheap that would also arrive very quick. For the power supply, this was an amazing deal. This is the EVGA 450 GD, and I got this off EVGA B-Stock for just $9 free shipping. For a 450 watt 80 plus gold PSU, this is insane. However, EVGA B-Stock has been pretty disappointing lately, and I'm hoping they do another drop like this, because you can never have enough power supplies. Now for the case, this is an interesting choice, and it's the Raidmax Messian ATX case. And the main reason I picked this case is because I asked a Discord server for any ATX cases for around $60, and someone showed me this one and said it kind of looked like a knockoff of the Fractal Meshify C, at least in the front. And when I got this case, I was in shock at how small and narrow this case was. This thing barely qualifies as an ATX case, and here's a dual fan RX 580 from XFX for scale. The GPU is just as long as the whole interior inside of the case. And I will admit that I was scared that none of these parts were going to fit in this case, especially the GPU that I picked out, which was an RX 580 2048 SP from AliExpress that I got for just $38 on sale. And the 2048 SP in the model name pretty much makes this an RX 570 8GB in terms of performance. Now thankfully this card did fit a bit better since it was a little bit shorter than the XFX card, but this small dual fan card still takes up pretty much the whole inside of the case. Another thing I found hilarious about this case is that it actually has support for a vertical GPU mount in this. So I guess if you want to choke your small dual fan card and just completely cover up the insides of your computer, you can vertically mount your graphics card in this case. As for the building experience in this case, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, honestly, once I realized that everything was going to fit. But man, it is a tight fit in here, and I don't think you'd want to use cable extensions in a case like this, especially since you get barely any rear cable management space. The front LED fans can be controlled through a button on the case, or by plugging into a 5-volt 3-pin header on your motherboard. The fans are Molex powered, so you can't control the speed. Luckily, they aren't too loud, however. The overall construction of the case wasn't the worst I've seen from these cheap gamer cases, but I probably wouldn't recommend this case. It went down to like $50 because I think $60 is just a bit too much for this case, but I still wanted to try it out anyways. So now would be the time where I show you how this thing performs, but nope. Bad luck has struck this computer and it will not post and gives an error code, which is in relation to the video card. So I tried reseating the card, nothing happened. So I thought maybe it was a strange compatibility issue with the card, because I did test this combo before putting it into a build with a GT610 in the top PCIe slot and it worked fine. So I started swapping out GPUs. Tried an SFX 580, no luck. Tried a GTX 750 Ti, no luck. Tried an old Quadro card, and I got it to post one time before it said, no, I don't think so, and quit working with the Quadro card. So I thought maybe it was a power issue because the PC posts fine with the GT610. So I swapped PSUs and still no luck. So next I tried the Elsa RX 580, the one from AliExpress, in the middle PCIe slot, same result. So I swap in my XFX RX 580 into the middle PCIe slot and it posts perfectly fine, like nothing bad was just happening. So then I swap back in my Elsa RX 580 and now the computer posts like it should. So I think I'm going to do, since this 580 is working, I'm going to put probably this Quadro card up in this top slot and see if it recognizes it, because on this board it shows each different thing that's hooked up. So this is where the GPU is, CPU, the 4 RAM, all that. So I'm going to put the Quadro card in here and then have the display hooked up to 580, and then I'm going to see if it detects the Quadro card. Because if it does detect it, then I'm going to lose my mind. I'm actually going to like just go insane and just throw this thing out. But if it doesn't, then maybe that top slot is just dead. I really don't know. Alright, so it straight up just does not detect the card. It doesn't even detect that there's something installed in here. And I bet if I shut this down and then I plug the display into the Quadro card that's in the top slot, it's not gonna work. I bet it's not gonna work. Would you look at that? It was on the DVI port, but it's plugged into the Quadro card. Probably see it back there. It's plugged into the Quadro card, and it's not working. So I guess I'm just gonna have to run this card in the bottom slot. Not even the bottom slot, just like this middle slot. It looks really bad, but it's just what I'm gonna have to do. I was so confused as to why only the GT610 would work in the top PCIe slot. However, it turns out that there must be a connection issue with the PCIe slot, whether it needs resoldered or what, but since my GT610 is a PCIe 1X card instead of a 16X card, it was able to work in the PCIe slot because it wasn't using all of the lanes. And this is a prime example of what type of strange issues you'll run into when you try to build yourself an ultra cheap gaming PC. So now that the GPU is in the middle slot, even though it's still running in Gen 3 speeds, it does look kind of odd there. So, what's the performance like? Well, I was only able to get a couple of benchmarks. I very quickly sold this PC after I stress tested it and listed it live. So the benchmarks I have for this computer are CSGO, GTA 5, Warzone 2, and BeamNG Drive. Alright guys, it's time to see how this ultra budget custom PC performs in some modern titles. First up is Fortnite, and at 1080p Pro settings, we got an average of 86 FPS. If you wanted to have a high refresh rate experience, you might be able to turn on performance mode, which would allow you to get more FPS hopefully. The CPU is the main bottleneck in this situation, and the CPU was constantly jumping between 90 to 100% usage. But there weren't too many stutters, and it was a pretty playable experience. Next for CSGO, at 1080p low, we got an average between 100 and 120 FPS. This was a pretty playable experience, and it would dip a few times into the 80 FPS range if there was more than a few players on the screen. It was mostly a smooth gaming experience, and I would consider this playable if you're just going to be playing this game casually. Next is GTA 5, and at 1080p with a mixture of low and medium settings, we got an average of 52 FPS while playing GTA Online. I bet if I turned down the settings to all low, we would have gotten closer to a 60 FPS average, but I still consider this to be pretty playable on this system. For Warzone 2.0, at 1080p low, we got an average of 42 FPS. However, there was a strange issue where the game would freeze constantly for about 3 to 5 seconds the first time I tried to play this game. It was quite a strange issue, I've never seen it before, but I'm thinking that it was because the game was trying to install shaders while I was playing, so after I restarted the game and ran through the benchmark again, it was a much smoother experience when we got that 42 FPS average. The big freezes were gone, but the game did still have its stuttery moments, and I believe this is because of the CPU being the bottleneck in this game. You could technically play this game on this computer, but if you wanted to play competitively, this PC isn't the one for that. One game that does run very well with this CPU is Minecraft 1.20. At 1080p fancy graphics with a 12 chunk render distance, we got an average of 212 FPS. I imagine if I try to run a mod pack or shaders on this PC, the average FPS would drop a lot, but for vanilla Minecraft, this is a very playable experience. The final game I tested is BeamNG Drive, which at 1080p medium settings, we got an average of 58 FPS. The reason I didn't go for any lower settings or resolution is because, once again, the CPU is being the bottleneck here. So no matter how low I turn down the game, the average FPS stays the same basically. So I had the settings cranked up a little bit so that at least that the game would look nicer, and it's still a playable experience even with these nicer settings, and we're almost hitting that 60 FPS mark. Finally, in 3D Mark Firestrike, we got a score of 9,841. So this PC build definitely didn't turn out how I imagined it would, but that's how it usually goes for these ultra budget PCs that I do. The CPU is definitely the biggest issue here in terms of performance, and you can upgrade it to a more powerful Xeon CPU if you wanted. I think you can go up to, I believe, 8 or 10 cores with the X79 platform. So let's talk profit. I built this PC for $237 and I sold it in a few days for $400 online, leaving me with a $122 profit after the fees. Honestly, not too bad for a cheap PC. I try to make at least $100 profit on these gaming PCs. So what did you guys think about this PC build? Let me know in the comments down below, and I hope you guys are enjoying these videos and this series. If you're not liking this series at all, feel free to let me know. But we are so close to hitting 1K subs, and it's honestly pretty crazy that almost 1,000 different people liked my content enough to want to subscribe. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time.